It's time to experience the O on the Original Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Mark Maradei.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this edition. Let's call it the NHL playoff edition of the Original Sports Podcast with yours truly, Mark Maradei. Today, we got a special guest joining us from the Beers in the Lot podcast, and then a couple of our normal BS crew. I like to call it Barbershop, but they're full of BS, so we'll just go to BS today. Go ahead. Introduce yourself there, Riggs.
Yeah, Eric Rigsby from Beers in the Lot podcast. We just drink beers and talk hockey. It's great. Thanks for having me back on the show. I was a guest last summer, I think, with Johnny Walker, who's one of the guys over at Beers in the Lot. And thank you again for inspiring us. Our guest spot last summer definitely inspired us to start the show. So thanks for having me, and thanks for the inspiration, Mark.
Yeah, no problem, man. Glad to have you back. Sis?
I think we're going to have to reformat us. Johnny Walker and beer. What's going on? Glad to be talking some shop about hockey playoffs.
Will?
Going on? I'm Will. Excited to be back. I think it's going to be a great show today.
Yeah, let's get after this thing. Hey, I'm coming right out of the gates with one of the most serious questions that I could possibly think of, because I think the NHL has brain damage sometimes. Why are they hell-bent on playing the rest of their regular season up in Canada? What? What? Does it make sense to you guys? I mean, we're already in the playoffs. Caps are they're playing game number 2 tonight against the Bruins, yet they still have at least one more game, or it's actually, I think Riggs said that they're playing out that game right now. Riggs, why? What's your opinion on that?
So it's a money thing, but it's not about revenue. It's definitely about the broadcast rights. So the NHL owes, those broadcast rights to their partners. So those games are going to be televised. The game's on right now. And then a lot of the players probably have, performance-based incentives built into their contracts. So if guys are playing for bonuses for, games played, minutes played, maybe there's some point totals at stake. The union is going to want to see those games played. So yeah. I think those are the two, biggest reasons.
Well, how impactful is that to then those who already purchased those tickets, right? Don't you think?
Well,
that might be why, another consideration.
Well, Canadian market teams do not have fans. They have zero capacity, right? So there's no one going to those games. So
none.
No, not in Canada.
That's why the Blue Jays are in Buffalo. That's right.
That's right.
They're still slow getting all those shots up there. They're
right.
way behind the curve from that perspective.
Yeah. So it's definitely the TV deals, and then the CBA and players' contracts. Like, they need to be able to play out those games and have the opportunity to make the money that they might be owed, depending on, those bonuses.
Will, you want to throw any insight in?
Yeah, that sounds pretty, but I think it is kind of like a PR thing where, like, the NBA's been playing, the MLB's been playing, and they have had 0 COVID cases. They've been able to play the whole seasons. And I think the NHL doesn't want to have like a gray mark on them being like the NHL hasn't been able to handle COVID. So if they're able to finish like a complete season, all the games played, I feel like it looks better than having like a stoppage in play and then them not having complete games.
I think we probably all competed on that level too, where it's like, we're not going to even make a dent in this. Like, we're not going anywhere. Why are we even playing this? That has to, like, the mentality of the players on the ice right now. Probably, why are we out here? Love the game, want to play, want to compete. But when we're done today, it's over. Like, what is the rationale?
Hockey players are a different breed, though, too. I'd have to agree with wanting to get out there skating, making their not even making their bonus, just making what they can out of the last few games. And I do like the fact that you said, no black mark, because if you think about it, who did it best last summer? Hockey did it best. They
Oh,
stuck
yeah.
them in a bubble, and there were no issues at all. They played it out as crazy as it was, as heartbreaking it was to Pens fans, Caps fans, and fans whose teams just got bounced out for no apparent reason. It still got played out without any real blemish on it. So I could see how they want to keep their track record going from that perspective. Hey, staying north of the border, let's get into some of this playoff stuff going on. The first two series, let's talk about Montreal and Toronto. These guys haven't played in a playoff game since 1979. 1979, which was amazing to me. If I had to pick a team north of the border that I root for personally, it's Toronto. Not because of the players on that team, but because of the tradition on that team. I was in Toronto a couple summers ago and kind of took a fancy to the city. I thought it was a spectacular place to visit. Also, I think you gave me some insight on it, Riggs, on what to look for once I got up there. But, what are we looking at here? I mean, what needs to happen for the Habs to win this thing? And what needs to happen for Toronto to win this thing? Let's start with Will. Go ahead, Will. What do you think?
I think for Montreal, their defense, I think, is probably a little bit better than Toronto, but I think Toronto's so fast and strong that I feel like Montreal's really going to have to up their defense. They're not as healthy right now, which is probably going to hurt them a little bit. And like something that when I was like researching this, it's been 54 years since Toronto's won a Stanley Cup, which I found really interesting.
Wow. Sis?
Yeah, I was going the defensive route for the Habs, and it takes me back to my CYO days. There was always that one dominant person, right? And what we do? We put like one or two guys on. We ran the box in one or the triangle in two. They're gonna have to do that with Matthews. I mean, this guy's skating circles. It's like the Ice Capades out there, Disney on Ice, and he's scoring like crazy. They're gonna have to just do something with him. The top goal scorer. They're 7-2-1 against the Habs this year, and Matthews and crew, I think, is just going to be too dominant for them. I think.
But then you start freeing up dudes like Mitch Marner.
Huh?
Then you start freeing up guys like Mitch Marner.
Yeah, but I think they're gonna take it in 5.
Riggs?
Dude, it's pretty interesting. This is sort of the all-time matchup in the NHL and pro hockey going back, 200 years or so. Every time the Leafs and the Habs have faced each other in the playoffs, the winner of that series goes on to win the Stanley Cup.
Wow.
So that, from a historical perspective, the matchup is a really big deal. I think this is a battle of physical health versus mental health. And I don't use that term lightly. I'm just going to make a point about Toronto. Toronto has to be able to face the adversity and get through it without making any rash decisions. And the first decision they're going to have to make is going to be in the crease. So Jack Campbell has played very well for them down the stretch, headed into the playoffs. He is named as the game 1 starter. He will let in bad goals. He will probably have a bad game in this series. Sheldon Keefe should not yank him from that starter's role and put Freddie Anderson in at that point, who is coming off of injury. Those are the kinds of things that they're going to have to face. It's going to be coaches' decisions and being able to stay up and positive throughout the series after some recent playoff exits that were very disappointing. With Montreal, it's all about physical health. Carey Price and Brendan Gallagher are 2 key players for them, obviously. They are both rehabbing in Laval, the Montreal AHL affiliate. The hope is that they'll be game ready for game 1. That's going to be a huge question mark, especially with Carey Price, because Montreal, as you guys already mentioned, they're going to have to adopt a bend but don't break strategy against Toronto. They are definitely outgunned. So that's kind of what I see in the series. Toronto's going to take it probably in 5 or 6 games. I don't think it goes to a game 7. But yeah, I think that's it.
All indications are that, like that's where I was with it too, in terms of Gallagher and Price. If Price steals a game or two, though, and they get on a roll, I mean, I watched it happen last year, although the circumstances were a little bit different, sticking them in a bubble, but they were half of the team from that perspective last year that they are this year. And then they got like an infusion, an injection of just some adrenaline going. They won a couple of games. Price stole them a couple of games. Next thing you know, the Penguins are knocked out and they're playing toe-to-toe the rest of the way. I mean, you just don't know. I'm with you. I think Toronto in 5 or 6, I'd agree. I love the Toronto team. I think the depth from top to bottom is fantastic. I know there's always a question mark with Toronto, though, with their defense. It hasn't been as glaring this year, but then again, the offense in Canada has been more dominant than the defense, to be quite honest.
It's not as glaring because of the teams they're playing, and they were just playing in division. So
right. And the Canadian teams don't stop shit, for the way I saw it. When you got a guy, well, we're going to talk about this series next, but when you got a guy who scores 105 points and a guy scores 84 points in 56 games, that tells me there's not a whole lot going on out there in terms of stopping those guys. And I get that those two guys are two of the most dominant players in the league, hands down. But they're also individuals out there, and they don't really look to dish it off when you look at the points. And let's go right there. Sis, let's start with you and then go to Riggs on this one. Edmonton and Winnipeg. Who do you like, and what pivotal players are going to have to take center stage, aside from when we look at Edmonton, aside from McDavid and Draisaitl? I mean, because those two guys ran away with the league scoring, but who else has got to be instrumental? Because as I looked at those teams, the next two highest scoring guys on those teams were Tyson Barrie with 48 points, and then Darnell Nurse with 36 points. It was incredible for me to see that after their two top centers, it was two defensemen with all the points on those teams. So what are you thinking about that series?
For me, obviously, I'm picking Edmonton. I think with McDavid and Draisaitl just dominating 105, I was looking at that. I didn't write it down, but McDavid scored the most points in 56 games, but you look at the top, I think 10, 15, 20 over the years, and Gretzky he dominated that it's like perennial every year, and Lemieux squeaked in a couple here and there, but with 56 games to score that many points is just, I thought that was extremely impressive. I don't know. Those two just controlling the ice for them. For Winnipeg, I know he's their number one. He's their the center on the first line. But I think if he doesn't go, the Jets won't go, and the only place they're going to go is home. If he doesn't, is Scheifele. Yeah. It'd be an interesting series, but I think it'll be short if he doesn't, get it started for them.
Riggs, can two top centers control an entire series in the playoffs? Because as well as I know, the playoff hockey should be totally different than regular season hockey.
And it is. The checking is a lot tighter. McDavid he's the fastest guy in the world on ice. So he's going to find his space, but he won't have as much as he did in the regular season. Edmonton is a two-trick pony. It's McDavid and Draisaitl, and there's nobody else as far as scoring is concerned.
Yep.
They do, they do have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and when I watched them this year, he looked good and he looked like he was engaged. I think the key for them is what is the status of Mike Smith. He had a great year, put up a .923 save percentage, but there's some question about his health right now, and they're really going to need him to backstop. Defensively, like Edmonton's not that good, so it's going to come down to goaltending, and that's going to be a theme in the playoffs this year. I think a lot of the questions for a lot of teams are, what is the status of their goaltending? on the Jets, they have Connor Hellebuck in the crease. He's very good.
Very, very good.
He could definitely steal games and steal the series if he needs to. And then, Blake Wheeler was mentioned. Scheifele was mentioned. And then Blake Wheeler, is on Winnipeg too, but you wouldn't know it because both of those guys had very disappointing seasons. So maybe they could turn the page, headed into the playoffs here. It's a new season, new start. A lot of guys look at it that way. Maybe they can get hot. And then, Winnipeg's, scoring threat is really Nikolai Ehlers. He's had some health issues and injury issues throughout the season. Nobody really knows what his status is right now, but if he could get healthy enough and get hot as well, the Jets are dangerous. And I actually picked them to beat Edmonton in this series in 7 games.
Yeah. Yeah. Will, who do you like in this series?
I mean, I feel like if it's going to be like high scoring and there's going to be like a lot, I like Edmonton, but I feel like if Winnipeg's able to keep Edmonton like 2 or 3 goals a game, I think it could be close. I'd probably give the edge to Edmonton just because I don't feel like Winnipeg's going to be able to stop them. So I'd probably give the edge to Edmonton, but I feel like it is going to go down to 7 games.
Only time I don't think Winnipeg can stop them maybe is when they go to Edmonton because they get the last change there. But I think Winnipeg skates 4 lines that are pretty even from top to bottom. And I think that in and of itself will take away in its entirety the third and fourth line of Edmonton and really put some pressure on Draisaitl and McDavid to perform in the playoffs. McDavid hasn't done anything in the playoffs. This is 5th or 6th year. Remind me, somebody.
I want to say 6th year, but he also hasn't he's only been in the playoffs once.
Yeah, exactly.
Correctly. So
you can't. I personally think this guy's going to end up getting traded out of there. That's just me. I know he fills seats there, but inevitably, what's the goal of owning a professional franchise? Win a championship, right? Eventually, okay. Other than the Pittsburgh Pirates, who don't believe in that. Most of the professional organizations, their goal is to win championships. Edmonton's just not getting it done by not making the playoffs, whether they're carrying Draisaitl and McDavid on the roster or not. Maybe you can get 4 or 5 guys for McDavid, keep Draisaitl. Draisaitl's not that far off of what McDavid's doing, to be quite honest with you, if you look at the whole big picture. So, from my perspective, I'm with you, Riggs. I'm riding Winnipeg in this one. I do think it'll go 7 games. I do think Hellebuck will still at least 1, if not 2 of those games. And if he can still 1 in Edmonton, look out. That's just my opinion. So who's going to represent the North in the finals in the semis?
I'm sticking with David. He's going for the McTrophy. I think he's going to do all right. And I don't think you could be that dominant throughout the year. I agree with Riggs that the ice, it shrinks and things get tighter and more intense. But I think he'll be able to open it up and do some of the things he's done throughout the year. Just good God, he scored 105 points.
Riggs, who you like coming out of the North?
Leafs, all the way. This is the year they finally make it past that first round.
You had the statistic to prove
barrier.
it. Will, who you like coming out of the North?
I like Toronto too.
Yeah, that makes 3 of us. Three Toronto picks.
Hey, it's not the first time I've been the oddball. So hey, keep going.
All right, let's come back south of the border and go out west. You got Vegas and Minnesota. What's it gonna take for each of those teams to win that series? Because that's a pretty tight series right out of the gates. You got some good goaltending. You got some really physical guys. You got a little bit of speed on those teams. Let's start with you, Riggs. What's it going to take for one of those teams to win? Who do you have it out of those 2?
So Minnesota's in a very similar situation that the Habs are in. They're in a bend but don't break, philosophy right now. I think you saw that in the game on Sunday, where they got spectacular goaltending. They capitalized on an opportunity in the overtime. They kind of limited Vegas's high danger chances in the middle of the ice. And they actually matched Vegas in high danger scoring chances, which was interesting. So very similar to Montreal, like they're definitely outmatched and outgunned. They just got to hold on and take advantage of those opportunities when they come up. For them, it may come down to special teams. Can they win that battle? Vegas, quite honestly, just has to show up. They have to get off the bus, get dressed, and get on the ice. They are very good. They dominate even strength play. They dominate even strength puck possession. And if you have the puck, your opponent cannot score. So that is their MO. And clearly in that first game, Marc-Andre Fleury looked spectacular. So if he can keep that up, they are very, very dangerous.
Does Vegas need to have 2 goalies that make $6 million?
We're in Vegas.
Yeah, just keep bringing the slot machines, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always a big debate amongst the hockey community about, how do you allocate your salary cap to your goaltenders? There was a philosophy at one time where I think the average was like, don't spend more than $3 million between the two, because you're better off putting a premium on scoring, especially in the new NHL that we all watch now with the new rules and everything. I don't know, like those players get paid on past performance too, right? They're not getting paid based on what they're doing today. They're getting, Marc-Andre Fleury's getting paid based on Stanley Cup wins with Pittsburgh. Yes, he's still very good, but he doesn't get paid for that. Leonard is the same way. He kind of solidified the goaltending situation in Vegas, when Marc-Andre Fleury kind of didn't start out so well and had some injury issues when he first got there. So, Leonard's getting paid based on that. So, I think it's too much for goalies. I would rather put money into top 6 forwards and then sort
Top
out
6 or bottom 6?
Top 6. If you're paying bottom 6 guys more than, a couple million and you're giving them term, you're doing it wrong as a GM.
Okay. Will, who you like?
I think, like Rig said, I think Vegas is the way more talented team, and I feel like it's probably going to come down to the goaltending. If Fleury plays like he did the whole time, I feel like it's going to be like a 5 or 6 game series. I also saw when I was doing some research that both teams are pretty bad in the power play. So I think that could also the power play kills for both teams are pretty abysmal. So I feel like it could come down to that if it could come down and I know both teams really don't score on the power play either. So it's going to come down to who's able to score when they're given the opportunity.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Cam Talbot was the goalie for Carolina when they won the Cup.
Yeah. I believe.
No, it was
I could be wrong.
When Carolina won it?
Yeah. That was 2011.
2011?
Oh, so that was 06.
Or 06?
Yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't Cam Talbot. But Cam Talbot, he's like Mike
Cam
Smith.
Ward. Cam Ward.
Yeah. Cam Ward. That's what it
Other
was.
Cam.
Yeah. But he's been around for a long time too, Cam Talbot. He's kind of been a journeyman himself, just like Mike Smith. Mike Smith really didn't do much over in Calgary. Yeah, he got him into the playoffs a couple of times, but, we're talking about that type of performance. So who you got in that series? Because it's an interesting series.
Not that this matters, because I think it's, Colorado, Vegas fought this out. But could someone just explain real quick? Probably Riggs can, because he's a walking hockey encyclopedia. I'm questioning whether he's really having beer and bourbon over there, but because he knows this much information, he's definitely sober. Why did Vegas finish second behind Colorado if they had more wins?
It might have been the regulation and overtime wins and losses.
So I'm looking at Vegas had 40 wins, 82 points. Colorado had 39 wins with 82 points.
That's
Right.
exactly what
So
he said.
it was, yeah. So you'll get so-called loser points, right?
Yeah.
In the overtime and shootout situations. And so they'll actually do a tiebreaker based on the regulation and an overtime win number. I forget how they do it. But my guess is that they had some sort of head-to-head tiebreaker in that category with Vegas.
That's how Pittsburgh beat out Washington for the division title.
Yeah.
But to me, like I saw, okay, Pittsburgh had 37 wins. So, and Caps had 36. So that made sense. And I was just like, okay.
It's about overtime wins.
Yeah, overtime. Okay.
Yeah.
But to me, to answer your question, I love Fleury, you know, because where you got to start. And I just think he's a great goaltender. I was still upset that they got rid of him. And he goes to Vegas, 2016. They've been, since their inception, they've been in the playoffs. And I'd like to see him get one out there just to get them off the snide. And they make it every year. They make it that far. And then they just, you know, but they need to do something for the poor guy. 1-0 in overtime. I don't think we've mentioned it yet. 4 games in the playoffs, 3 of them went in overtime so far. And if you're not a hockey fan, guys, you have to watch some of these games and it'll get you hooked.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just been so much fun watching these 4 games. But they need to provide some offense, a 1-0 game in overtime. Yeah, Vegas could probably just step off the bus and wipe the Wilds, but you know, on the ice, but they didn't do that. And they do need to show up though. Once they get off that ice, show up, lace them up and do what they did all year and give Fleury some support.
You know, the Wild are interesting to me because Bill Guerin is the GM there. So I'm wondering a page of which book is he taking his philosophy out on building this Wild team, because they have some of the intangibles I saw with Pittsburgh when they won in 16 and 17, yet he has his own wrinkle to that team right now. The Wild, the goalie, Talbot, but don't they have a young goalie too right behind him? Is that who it is? Am I thinking of the right team with the young goalie? Well, he's not such a young goalie. Let me put it this way. Is he the one that was like 26? He's 26 years old, but he was a number 1 draft pick, and it's taken him this long to get there. Am I thinking of the right team?
Yeah, I don't remember. It's funny about Minnesota because we've actually talked about it on our show. Minnesota's interesting now when they haven't been for years, right?
Right.
And it's all due to Kirill Kaprizov. Outstanding
really
rookie, just superstar player, plays both sides of the puck really well. So that's why they're relevant, right? Like,
interestingly, he's 5'9".
Yeah,
but he moves like a pissant on the ice. I heard him today compared to a more highly skilled Brendan Gallagher. That's what I heard him compared to, just because of his size. And you know, Gallagher's kind of have that tenacity. He doesn't mind being in the crease, getting the snot beat out of him and still scoring, you know, and that's where Kirill is. Yeah, he is really fun to watch. And he kind of flew below the radar until they start getting closer to making the playoffs. Well, actually, no, I take that back. About 2 months ago, they came on the scene like gangbusters. They rattled off a bunch of wins and they were fun to watch. But I think Bill Guerin will build towards a championship caliber team there. And I know they get to support Minnesota. As much as I hate to say it, though, I do see Vegas going on. And then you get to the next series, which is really interesting because one of these 2 teams I really like going to the finals, but Colorado and St. Louis. St. Louis has been one of the biggest underachieving teams essentially the whole entire season. You know, and I don't know if it's because of they lost Pietrangelo or, you know, exactly what has caused them, injuries, you know, whatever the case may be. But I kind of felt like they squeaked in. Now they kind of scare me a little bit in terms of of their level of play, because they're a big team, a strong team. They'll get physical with you. They just won the cup, 2 years ago? So they know what it takes to win the cup. They got pretty much the same supporting cast from that perspective. But man, when you look at Colorado from top to bottom, whether you start at center or you start at, their bottom two pairing of their defense, they are a loaded team. And, I'll do me right now. And I'll tell you, I think that Colorado wins this series. I don't even know how much of an impact anything that St. Louis can throw at them, unless they start taking guys off the ice like McKinnon. I think Colorado runs away with this at 5, maybe.
They're going to have to bring Brett Hall back. Maybe. I don't know.
That's my take on that series. What do you think then, Sis? If you're thinking Brett Hall needs to come back for St. Louis, where are you at with this?
Yeah, obviously a little too old, but I think, you like you mentioned, you got the firepower there in Colorado with Rantanen, Burakovsky, Jost. The only thing that could happen for the Blues is if those guys go down. You never root for that, right? But if those guys go down or they're spending too much time in the box or something crazy like that happens, I think with the plus minus differential is like the Blues squeaked in there to me. They squeaked in that last spot. They were finished net minus points, whereas the Avalanche, they were like almost plus 70. And how do you compete with that?
They won the President's Trophy.
And you do. And that's what I love about hockey. You got there, you do. And these guys, man, they play to the final whistle. And I just think, though, with that plus minus, and also the Avalanche scored almost 20 more points than the Blues. I think St. Louis will be singing the Blues after this series.
Will, who you got?
I definitely have Colorado. I think they're just better top to bottom. I think they're just more physical. I think they just have just a better team all around. I think the only thing that could help the Blues is if Jordan Binnington has like a run like he did, like when they won the Cup 2 years ago and nobody was scoring on him. They really need, like, if he can shut down that offense, I think they'd have a chance. But I even think with that, I don't give him much of a chance.
Can Binnington do that, Riggs? Against this team?
No, he had a terrible year, and who knows what's going on, but he had an awful year. You mentioned Pietrangelo leaving. That was a huge blow. They are not even close to the same team that they were 2 seasons ago. They've also got they have at least one key player on the COVID-19 list right now, and David Perron. That really hurts them. So they're up against it here. The only reason why Colorado didn't make the Cup final last season was because of injuries. And that's really the only thing that's going to stop them this season. Avs in 5 over the Blues. I'll give St. Louis a win, just because, the Chief, Craig Berube, is the coach, and maybe he can, fire up the guys and they can figure out a way. But yeah, this is going to be a short one.
I'll tell you my feeling, though. If Colorado falls behind in this series and has to start pressing, look out. I think if they have to start pressing and get out of their game, it is going to be a different story for them. But they should never fall behind in this series. I definitely like Colorado coming out of the West. And then in the South, I mean, let me just say this. I absolutely despise Tampa, especially after what I heard today about Tampa. Okay. I would like nothing better than to see Tampa get bounced first round. I don't know if it'll happen, but Tampa and Florida is kind of an interesting series because Florida's gritty, they're tough, and they got the Bob in net, right? I mean, you just never know with him. If he gets red hot, what's going to happen? I think that series is going to be a little more interesting than a lot of people thought. Maybe 6, maybe 7. I don't know. I think Tampa pulled a fast one. I know Riggs and I were talking about this off camera. The NHL, I don't know if you guys heard about this. The NHL has a rule where, you know, you can bank your money if a guy's on LTIR, long-term injury reserve, and you can actually bring that guy back in the season and be over the cap going into the playoffs. So now Tampa is $17 million over the cap, and there is no repercussion for that. They can play with that much money over the cap.
There's something about state tax law and all that too. Like
I don't know about all that. I haven't read into anything like that. All I know is that they're $17 million ahead of every other team essentially that's playing in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And from what I heard this morning, and it was a pretty good source, speaking on the NHL, saying that, you know, Kucherov, he basically was ready a couple of weeks ago, but by leaving him on there and not activating him until the playoffs, that's where that $17 million was able to kick in, and it has no impact on the playoffs. Essentially, basically in a nutshell, what I heard was there's no salary cap in the playoffs. So if you can manipulate the rules well enough, you can go ahead, get into the playoffs, and, you know, bring any guy back that you had on long-term injury reserve if you just squeaked in. That's why they didn't care losing the division to Carolina. It didn't make a damn bit of difference to them. But I think that in the end, though, Tampa's just going to be way too powerful for Florida. Riggs, what's your take on them?
So this series is going to be probably the most entertaining series. Towards the end of the season, Florida and Tampa played a couple times. There's a lot of bad blood. There was a lot of extra stuff going on after whistles and things. So between this and Montreal Leafs, you know, these are probably the two most entertaining series, and this one probably takes the edge because there's a lot of hate right now. And you saw it in the first game. Things, you know, boiled over a little bit. Sam Bennett had a disciplinary hearing today for boarding Blake Coleman.
He got a game.
So you know, there's a lot going on there. Florida is definitely a young up and coming roster. They play well. They play very fast. They score off the rush. They're not so much a possession team as they are like, let's get the puck, let's fly down and get our chance. But that's not gonna get them over the hump with Tampa. Tampa just has too much proven talent. You mentioned Kucherov and Stammer coming back. That definitely helps them, and it gets everybody slotted in the right place in the lineup. Tampa's X factor player, though, is Braden Point. In my opinion, he should have won the Conn Smythe last year when they won the Cup.
Absolutely,
he was the most impactful player in those playoffs. He can skate well, good vision, tough, just all around good player, and definitely drove their offense.
And he's always a healthy player.
Absolutely, very durable.
You know,
and then, so speaking of the health aspect, Tampa's got a little bit of a problem on D, where Victor Hedman, who ended up winning the Conn Smythe, Ryan McDonough and Andre Palat are a little bit banged up going into this first round. So that'll be interesting to see. And then you mentioned Bob already. You know, Tampa has no slouch in net either in Vasilevsky. So this could come down to a bit of a goalie battle too, between the Russians. But I think in the end, you know, Tampa definitely has the edge. Might be a long series, might be 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, agreed. Will, who you got in this one?
See, I want to say Florida, but I feel like it's hard to go one against the champs and then one against like one of the best teams. I feel like Tampa definitely has the edge on defense, especially with Valesky. I feel like it's going to go down to like 6 or 7, but I feel like Tampa has the playoff experience over Florida, and I feel like that will kind of help them out in the end.
Go ahead, Sis.
So you got this in-state rivalry, but just to be clear, no one cares about the Snowbird State. I let them beat the crap out of each other. It makes a good series, but I think Lightning will come out, prevail, be based on experience and what we've talked about. And just last night, Kucherov coming back, he scored 2 goals last night.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, he just stuck his skate in the ice and he went and he was good. They have that, like we talked about, the experience. I think they'll come out of the South there as well.
Let's move on then to the Predators and Hurricanes. The Hurricanes won that division. The Predators are kind of red hot, though, coming into the playoffs. So, what do you think there? If you think Tampa's coming out of there, Sis, what do you think about that next series? Who can give Tampa a little bit of a challenge?
I think the Hurricanes will. I don't know about Nashville. I think with Nashville, again, the issue with them is the scoring. I don't know if they have the firepower to hang in there, and especially if they did make it to the next round, which I don't think they will. I don't know if they could overcome the Lightning. I think it'll be a good game, a good series. It could be a game like the Knights had with the Wild, the 1-0 overtime luck goal. That could be something that could help the Predators. If they stay in there, the goalies stay strong, they could overcome and defeat the Hurricanes. But I don't think that'll happen. The Hurricanes have a plus 43 over top of the Preds. That's just, to me, those the stats stand out to me. I know they're just numbers. They speak volumes to me when you're comparing things like this, but you have the players to back it up. And I think the Hurricanes have those players to back it up over the Predators.
But Riggs, Nashville's healthy for the first time in a long time. They've rattled off 7 straight wins. They got Philip Forsberg back, and they've got Pekka Rinne in net. I think that bodes well for them.
Yeah, I actually really like the goaltending situation in Nashville versus Carolina's situation. Carolina's going to start Nedeljkovic, who's a young goalie. I think virtually no Stanley Cup playoff experience. So I think that counts for something in the favor of Nashville. Between UC Saros and Pekka Rinne, depending on who's hot, they could definitely steal games and steal a series. So, the Canes, they're another team. They're a lot like Vegas, where they dominate possession, especially at even strength. They've got Svechnikov, they got Aho, they've got some guns up front. The question with them is, can they get secondary scoring from the middle six? I tend to like Nino Niederreiter on that team. I liked him when he was with Minnesota, and I like watching him play with Carolina. However, going back to the goaltending, Pekka Rinne and Saros were playing well down the stretch, and that's how they won all those games coming into the playoffs. I actually picked this as an upset, Nashville over Carolina.
That's been a popular pick. There's a lot of people on the NHL Network who took that pick too. Will, who you got in this one?
I think I got Carolina. I think Nashville definitely has the edge, the goaltending. But something that surprised me when I was looking at this matchup, I saw that the Hurricanes had 6 players outside of their top line that had double-digit goals for the year. And I feel like if they keep getting that production, I feel like they'll be able to beat the Predators. And I feel like the Predators don't have as much help coming off the bench.
So they're peaking at the right time. Yeah.
Let me ask this question. It's kind of off the beaten path to a certain degree. Which one of the divisions you think, let's just say, characteristically speaking, which one do you think was the weakest then? Because I feel like the South was the weakest, and that's my opinion. What do you think? Riggs, what do you think? You're the hockey connoisseur.
It absolutely was this division, and I predicted that before the season started. Nashville's in, but when I looked at how they kind of aligned this division, when I saw Nashville, Detroit, who, they're in a rebuilding place, Chicago, who doesn't want to admit that they're rebuilding, but they are, and then you had Florida, who, they're going to play this series against Tampa, whatever. The division is just not very strong. And so I picked it that way.
Yeah, and that's why I wrote Nashville too going into into this as an upset as well. I just feel like the Hurricanes, even if the Hurricanes get out of this series, I think they lose in the next one, either to Tampa or Florida. If Florida ends up knocking Tampa out. I was listening again. I listen to probably a little bit too much sports talk and watch a little bit too much TV sports talk, but I heard some guys today talking about how they think the Hurricanes are going to represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This team doesn't have what it takes from top to bottom. Now, again, it's the NHL playoffs, and you don't know who's going to get hot. Honestly, you get out of that first series, that second series tells you who's going to get hot. It's not really that first series, to be honest. And that's me. I see Riggs saying, yeah. Like I said, I go by what he tells me because he knows a little bit more.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't play in the league or anything, so I don't really know. But
he did just say a little bit. He didn't say
you don't. Yeah, you don't, like, to your point, you don't really know what you have probably until the third or fourth game of that first round.
Yeah, exactly.
Because now, like, you've seen all the matchups. Everybody knows what everyone else is doing. And you're playing these little matchup mini games, inside of the overall game. And so that's when you really know what you have, right? And again, like I mentioned, Toronto having to face the adversity and overcome it mentally. That's so much of the grind through the Stanley Cup playoffs. Things are going to go wrong. Guys are going to get banged up and hurt. The puck is not going to bounce the way that you need it to or want it to at certain points. You just got to get through that. It's a war of attrition, really. And so, again, like this first round, game ones and game twos, like, okay, fine. Yeah, they can be exciting and maybe you kind of get an idea, but you're not going to know until later on, right?
It also becomes apparent later on, too, how much depth means to a team. So if you fought through some injury throughout the course of the regular season, got back a pretty healthy lineup going to the playoffs, and then you lose a couple guys, you can grab some guys, inject them into the lineup, and you really feel pretty good about it because they've already got some good reps in the regular season with your team. So that leads me to my next division, all right? Barring none, I feel like this is the best division in hockey. I know we're all a little impartial to it, a Caps fan, a couple of Penguins fans, okay? But, I mean, you look at it from top to bottom, the points that separated first and fourth place to get in. Even fifth place was right there, okay? Buffalo was they were the anomaly of the division, to be quite honest with you.
Buffalo Bills almost won it more games than the Buffalo.
Yeah. So, I mean, that being said, personally, I didn't think Pittsburgh should have won the division. I didn't think that. They played hard. They played well, but they didn't play like a division championship type of team. They had too many brain lapses along the way. They had a lack of inconsistency, but they did what they needed to down the stretch. But before I get to that series, I want to talk about what I think is the best series, to be honest with you. I think the Caps Bruins, that matchup is phenomenal. It really is. You got Chara playing against his old team. You've got some rookie goalies playing against, not anymore. You got Craig Anderson in the fold, but you got some rookie goalies playing against some veteran guys. You got the big bruisers. I mean, I think that's a spectacular matchup. From my standpoint, I think whoever's standing after 7 games wins it. If you get Kuznetsov back and he's playing well, that'll help the Caps, maybe, but they've been playing well without him. If they find a way to nullify Oshie more than Ovechkin, I think Oshie's a wild card in this series. If they find a way to stifle him, I think the Bruins could win this series. Don't know if it'll happen because I think the Caps roll out 4 lines. They do it right in the East. They really do. They really practice 4 lines. And, from my perspective, though, that's where I stand with that. I think it's going to go 7 games. I think it'll come down to nullifying a guy like Oshie on the Caps for the Bruins to win. On the other side of that coin, if you can keep Pasternak off the Dunkin' Donut commercials and let him play some hockey, that'll help them because he really has not been as hot as he was to start the season. So go ahead, Riggs. I know you're chomping at the bit on this one.
Yeah, so you just mentioned Pasternak and Oshie's in those Dunkin' Donuts commercials too. So you
That's
got
right. I forgot.
commercials. So Pasternak, Bergeron, Marchand, the so-called perfection line. They are going to dominate you offensively. They are going to not allow you to have the puck, and they've already done that. Like game one, when they were on the ice, was a disaster defensively for Washington. So that when they're on the ice, it's a bend, don't break strategy. Contain them, limit their chances. The Bruins were the hottest team in the East Division after the trade deadline. If you look at the numbers from the trade deadline on, when they got Taylor Hall, they were the best team in the East. Taylor Hall injected secondary scoring immediately for them, which they needed because really all they had was the perfection line. So now they have guys slotted in the right places in their lineup up front. Defensively, they're a little suspect. Past that first pairing with starring Charlie McAvoy, they're a little suspect defensively, and they made some lineup changes after game one because Lausanne just got abused defensively for the Bruins. So, and then you have Tuukka Rask. If you're looking in the crease, historically he's not performed very well against Washington. Ovechkin tends to just eat his lunch every game out. So, if they have Bergeron and Marchand and Pasternak going, Taylor Hall keeps up his production with David Krejci, they're very dangerous. They could score a lot of goals and they could score them fast. So yeah, that's the Bruins. On Washington side of things, you have a goaltending mess right now. You had two rookies that were alternating starter spots through the season. Samsonov goes down on the COVID-19 list. And then apparently there were some disciplinary issues internal to the team. Okay, whatever. Vanacek starts, he gets hurt. Craig Anderson comes in, cleans up, and they win an OT in game one. How's that going to go? Because right now for game two, they have Anderson named the starter and Phoenix Copley, who spent most of the season down in Hershey. Backing up, right? So there's big issues there. Defensively, they were actually a lot better this year than they probably get credited for. I think Nick Jensen paired with Zdeno Chara was a revelation for the team. Jensen now looks like a completely different hockey player. And that's a great third pair. And then obviously, John Carlson, Dmitry Orlov are still around. Justin Schultz was able to stay relatively healthy, except for eating a puck in a game and having to wear a bubble for a little bit. But I like their blue line core. The issue with Kuznetsov coming off COVID-19 list now is, what do you do with the lineup? Because you are playing well, like you mentioned, Mark. So does he come back in, take a first or second line center spot, and then you slot everybody else where you think it's appropriate? Or maybe you hold him out because he hasn't played in so long, and maybe he actually was hurt or sick or something was going on, and he's not ready. And so you need to have Oshie kind of fill in at center in that third spot. Who knows?
Riggs, is Kuznetsov a head case?
So there's a lot of speculation about that. It's funny. Somebody on Twitter, I forget the account, but they were digging into some of the previous media on Kuznetsov, and there was an off season. I don't think it was after the Cup, but it was around those years where a reporter asked him about the Hart Trophy and if he thought he would ever be in the running for the MVP. And he flat out said, in order to win the Hart Trophy, you have to work 365 days a year. So ask that question again. Is he a head case? And is he, that committed to what they're trying to do? And so there are a lot of people, myself included, in that fan community right now, that we think maybe the team is done with him, and we're kind of like, yes, please. So that's where I am on Kuzi.
Malkin for Kuznetsov. You in?
I don't want him either.
So who wins that series?
I picked Caps in 7. Mostly because I think this is sort of like the last hurrah for Washington and Pittsburgh.
Does Obi resign?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Does he resign at a team-friendly amount? Because I know they are pushed against the cap.
They'll give him 4x10.
What's his health like right now?
Oh, he's definitely hurt. I mean,
He's not 100%, but
he's not, but he looked really good game 1. He was hitting everything that moved. And he was going to the front of the net, which is a really good sign. But the other thing about this is, like, no one is 100% healthy going in the playoffs. You just played, I mean, even though it was only 56 games, you just played 56 games.
going into those last
furious too.
You're dinged up,
Yeah.
So
going in those last few, he came out, he went back and things like that. I didn't know.
He had, I think the speculation was like there was a knee thing going on. But obviously, like, teams don't tell you anything. It's lower body, upper body, right?
Yeah.
I love
So,
that. I got one of those every day.
Will, who you like in that series?
I think I give like the slight edge to Boston. I think talking about the big guys, Marchand, Pasternak, and Bergeron. I think, and it also comes down to the goaltending. I think the Boston just has like the more experience, and I think coming to the playoffs, I really think most of the time experience like trumps like being a rookie. But I mean, sometimes we've seen rookies go in there and be better than the veterans. And
You watched Matt Murray do it in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Like, so, I mean, like, it could happen. And I mean, like, they also could be thinking less and just kind of going out there trying to make a name for themselves. So,
Sis?
I don't think it matters what I say. These guys covered it all. I do think Washington, one of the things they're going to have to address is that goalie issue, maybe in the offseason. Just following along with that, and what other people have said and talked about was the goalie issue. Getting somebody that they could plant their laurels on and run with it like they have in Boston with Tuukka Rask. But he could be iffy. I think 9-10 save percent or something like that. I think that could be the difference maker in this series. And they both have the firepower. I think they're both beat the crap out of each other. Love seeing it. Penalty kills, keeping themselves out of the box, but penalty PKs, I think they're 5th. Caps are 5th in the PK, which is awesome, but the Bruins are 2nd in the league at that. And so that's going to be a big deciding factor. You get that edge, you're on a power play, but who can kill it? And
Marchand is so dangerous as a
make
penalty
that
killer
swing.
too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
make that swing, get a shorty, something like that. I think they're both powerhouses. I think Bruins might come out of it on top.
Riggs, I'm going to give you 4 categories for this series, and you tell me what 2 categories need to be won in order to win this series. And you don't have to pick a winner, even though you've already said the Caps, and that's perfectly fine. Face-offs, hits, power play goals, or staying out of the box. If you had to pick 2 categories that need to be won definitively to win this series, which 2 would you go with?
So T Sizzle just mentioned it. The Caps power play, I think, was 3rd coming in or something like that. And obviously Boston had the best penalty kill in the division. So if Washington could find a way to break through that, that's a big deal. If Boston could obviously keep Washington's power play at bay, that's going to be good for them. I'm not a big hits guy. I like watching hits, but keeping that as a stat, it tells me that if you are hitting more, you don't have the puck as often as the other team does. So I'm not big on that. Face-offs probably more important. Again, going back to special teams, if you're on a kill and you can win that face-off in your zone, it's like a free out, right?
Yeah.
If you're on the power play, you can win that face-off. Now you can go to work.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. And then obviously, when it comes down to crunch time, those face-offs become huge. Towards the end of games, that's a big deal. And especially for these teams, Boston and Washington have, I think the number is they've played 10 straight 1-goal playoff games against each other since 1998. So when they meet each other in the playoffs, it's always that close. And if it's that close and you either need a goal or you need to, prevent the other team from scoring, winning faceoffs in the offensive and defensive zones is going to be huge.
How insane is that? 10 straight 1-goal games. Hey, Will, who do you like in the Pens Islanders series? Because this is a very interesting series. I mean, the Pens won the season series 6-2, but I don't know if the Penguins are a playoff team. Watching them play, I don't think they change gears.
Yeah, something about the Pens in the playoffs the last couple of years have been tough to watch for sure. Also, like with the Penguins, the goalie situation, I don't like at all. I feel like Jari yesterday was not great, and I feel like the Islanders yesterday really were able to show that they could really keep up the Penguins, and it wasn't going to be like the regular season. I think the Penguins definitely have more depth than the Islanders, and I feel like if it goes down to 7 games, I like the Penguins, but I feel like if it's like a 5-6 game thing, I feel like the Islanders will pull it out.
This goes down to 7 games. I can tell you my TV won't be on because I was at the arena when David Volek scored to beat the Penguins years and years ago, and I will never. Yeah, that left a deep, brutal scar. That and Alfred Papunu torching the Steelers in the AFC Championship. Yeah, I think you were with me, weren't you, Sizzle? Weren't we at the Alfred Papunu game?
Yeah. Then we were at the 2-2-2 bar game.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that one. All right, give me your prediction there then. Who do you like? Because this series is, I don't know. I just don't know.
It was amazing. Islanders were competing for that first spot, and then something just happened. It was around 35, game 35, 40. They just kept creeping their way to that last playoff spot. They got it. They hung in there. And I think that's their game right now. Not just nickel and dominant, but really hanging in the game. Don't play outside yourself. Play the game. Hang in there. Catch the Pens taking their naps, which watching them all year, they do. They either come out of the gate explosive or they're extremely lackadaisical. And then they play a period solid, and they make their shifts. They work hard to get the puck in the zone. They get some shots. They play solid D, and then they take a nap. And it's like, what the hell is going on? It's crazy. And then they put Jari on an island, and everyone's like, get Jari out of there. It's Jari's fault. And we saw it yesterday, and they have to step it up. I think they'll turn around. I love coach will just lay into them. They'll come out tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe they'll score 4 or 5 goals on the Islanders like they did the last time. But
For a minute there,
I think
I thought Pittsburgh Dad was on here because you get him out of there. You sound just like Pittsburgh Dad. I got kind of scared. I didn't think I had him on the show for this. Riggs, you got to have some feelings on this matchup. I mean, the Islanders are definitely going to check them tight. We saw it happen already in game 1. Ironically, Crosby got his ass handed to him and he still scored a goal. which was amazing. But we see Sidney Crosby do amazing things quite a bit as an NHL player. I thought their goalie chopping Gensel's skates out from underneath him as he went into the board probably should have not only cost him a game misconduct, but maybe a suspension. It was clear cut. I went back and looked at it a number of times. He has the puck over here and he chops his skates.
They were trying to say that was accidental.
Yeah, whatever. But it's, let's face it, it's the Trotz way of playing the Penguins in the playoffs. Riggs?
So yeah, Barry Trotz definitely has Pittsburgh and Mike Sullivan's number. He knows where to apply pressure on the ice and where not to. And like T. Stiesel said, to play sort of within themselves and not try and run and gun with Pittsburgh. The Sorokin thing was absolutely intentional. Even at real speed, I think I said, I yelled at the TV, like, what did he just do? When I saw Gensel go down. So there's that. This series is kind of interesting. Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh. They still have their core intact, albeit without Gino right now. When I was watching that game, I felt like Pittsburgh was outplaying the Islanders, and it wasn't even close. And then when I looked at the numbers this morning, it definitely showed that Pittsburgh carried the play at even strength, and that's going to bode well for them. I really think that Jari lost that game for them. Those two floaters that went in, those cannot go in. And you could actually see, if you go back and watch the defenseman's reactions to those two goals. And the way things happen, they kind of were playing it like he was going to make those stops. And then they went in, and you could see the body language. They just slumped, right? So that's going to be a problem. That goaltending situation there, I'm not sure what they can do. I don't know DeSmith's status. Maybe one of you guys know.
He's not out. Legacy is the backup, or he's still out. Legacy is the backup.
So he's young, right? And I don't know what you do there. So yeah, there's that. The Isles have Sorokin, and he's played really well. They still have Varlamov. He played well down the stretch. So I kind of give, the Islanders a little bit of an edge there in the crease. The Islanders are really dependent on their middle six. Barzal up in that top line, speedy guy, definitely drives their offense. But you can check him, right? Like you can make him a non-factor in games. He's going to get his chances, but he's not like the guys we talked about earlier, McKinnon and McDavid and these types.
Right.
The Isles really need that middle six to come up big, and they did in that game. Beauvillier, Pajot, Palmieri, right? The Pajot line, I think, is going to be matched up against Sid, and so can Pajot and his line mates still get their chances while they're trying to check tightly against Gensel and Sid and Russ? Who knows? But they definitely had a formula for capitalizing on the chances that they got. I'll just end with this. I did pick the Pens in 7, and it's really a sentimental pick. I mentioned it earlier. I think this is Pittsburgh and Washington's sort of last hurrah as that, second round rivalry kind of thing to then go on further in the playoffs. If you look at, contract situations and ages of players coming up, we already talked about Ovechkin. I think this is it for this era. So, yeah.
Yep. I'll tell you a couple of things. Number one, last time Jari, let's just say, shit the bed in goal at the end of the game, even though Crosby acknowledges every player as they're going off the ice, win or lose, he did not acknowledge Jari. I'm pretty sure that the same thing happened yesterday. Wasn't privy to be able to watch that. I was celebrating my daughter's 18th birthday. And I'm pretty sure that after that happened, which was probably like a month, maybe 5-6 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly, Jari got red hot and they played well for a long stretch there with him staying red hot. So I look for tomorrow night to be a rebound game. On the other side of that too, Malkin has practiced again. If he slots into that second line and you've got Pajot's line checking that first line and you've got Clutterbuck's line checking that second line, that leaves Jeff Carter on the third line. And who's going to check that group? Because Carter has been unbelievable since he's become a Penguin. He had 5 goals the last 2 games against Buffalo, and he really brings something to the table. The best thing I heard from any guy in terms of playoff hockey was from Carter. As I read quotes and stuff, Carter said, you have to approach each game with a sense of urgency. Each shift, each time you walk into the arena, you have to approach each and every one of them. And as soon as you let your guard down on any shift or anything, it could change what your outcome is and if you're golfing a few days later or not. You know, if anybody knows, it's Carter. He's a really good professional. Didn't hear much about him, us being out east and him being out west, but he was really solid when he was in Philly. He did a great job in Columbus, and he won a couple of cups with Los Angeles when he was out there. So I'm going to stick with Pittsburgh in 6. I think they rebound. I think that was a wake-up call. I also don't think Crosby's going to let that happen again to them, what happened yesterday. I just don't see that happening. I think the defense will tighten up a little bit. Maybe they're not as involved in the play in the offensive zone to protect the goalie a little bit more at this point. Maybe a little bit more ice time for a guy like Tanev, who plays a 200-foot game and he plays it fast and furious.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
And we'll see how Sully plays that out. Who wins the East, Riggs?
So I think I have a go back. Did I say Pens in 7?
You said Pens in 7 in that
Yeah.
series.
So I'm looking at my bracket right now that I submitted a couple days ago, the Original Sports Podcast bracket, and I actually had Caps in 7. I think I was doing coin flip on the 7th game. I actually think that Washington has a little bit more depth in bottom 6 scoring.
Okay.
Right now. But you mentioned Tanev, and then that kind of jogged my memory. I think he's great. I love watching him play, and he has those crazy eyes too. You know, he's just a really cool player to watch and a cool personality. So I actually had the Caps coming out, and then playing Toronto.
Yeah. Will, what do you got?
I have the Bruins coming out of the East.
Okay.
I think I have them also playing Toronto.
Sis?
I'm going to stick with my original thing because I don't want to jinx anything, you know. Got to keep God wills here, right? So Pens coming out of the East playing the Oilers.
Okay. I actually have Toronto and Colorado, and I have Toronto winning the Cup, guys. As far as the East goes, I think the Bruins come out of the East. I don't know. There's something about that team. They just, I don't know. They've been that team. I feel like they're an Achilles heel in everybody's butt. You know, Caps, Pens, you name it. I just think they can beat any of those teams 4 games in a 7-game series. So hey, let's do let's kind of wrap up our picks and do a little word association here as we get near the end of the show. I'm going to give you some words, and I want you to tell me what comes to mind. I'm going to start with Riggs. Greatest team of all time, Stanley Cup.
Pick one of the 24 times that Montreal won the Stanley Cup.
That makes sense.
Pick any of them. You know, put a blindfold on, put your finger on the page. The history of that team, I mentioned earlier, the history of Toronto and Montreal. You're talking about centuries worth of history.
Yeah.
And the Habs winning the thing 24 times over that history is just amazing. And some of the the names that come out of that are just amazing names historically in hockey. So I say, you pick a Habs team that won the cup, and you can't go wrong.
Sis,
They only played Toronto. There was just the two of them for years.
original six, baby. It wasn't.
Obviously, I think you ask that question, anyone's going to say the Habs, but I'm going to be a homer and I'm going to say the 91, 92 Pens. And this is why, because that's what turned me on to hockey. Okay. And it could be your home team, whatever, but watching Lemieux, Yager, Coffey, Barrasso, to me, in my personal mind, that was the best team for me. Yes, I can go with the Montreal Canadiens because they won 24, but just watching those guys in those 2 years back to back too. And then being able to participate in the fan fest and going down to the rally, watching them at the point, at the confluence there, right? So it was great. To me, best team that I've experienced and witnessed.
Will?
Yeah, I kind of went with the team that I've watched before, and I kind of went with I know it was a short season, but the 2012, 2013 Blackhawks were. I just remember watching them on TV, and they never lost. They were always picking up points, and I feel in the playoffs they didn't lose many games, and it was kind of crazy to watch.
Interesting. I'm going to go with, I kind of had two. I was tossed up between Edmonton and the Islanders. Those teams won multiple cups, multiple years in a row. That Edmonton team was absolutely stacked with Wayne Gretzky, Yari Curry, Luc Robitaille, Mark Messier. I mean, I could go on and on. Paul Coffey, Grant Fuhrer in goal. That team was spectacular. That Islanders team, same thing. I could just roll tons of names off of my tongue, and you guys would know them all because essentially they're a lot of Hall of Famers. If they weren't Hall of Famers, they were fringe players that should have potentially gotten the Hall of Famer, except for the fact that they let some other people in during that period of time. Greatest playoff player ever. Will, greatest playoff player ever.
So I had to do some research on this one because I like a lot of older guys but going and looking at this, Brett Hall, and looking at his stats, he had 38 game-winning goals, which is just crazy to think about in the playoffs, which is insane.
Yep. Sis?
Obviously, the great one, Wayne Gretzky. I think everyone compares themselves, trying to stack up against him. What I mentioned earlier about his scoring titles, he had, what was it, 10 or something like that. Just phenomenal and just really set the bar. It took what, his predecessors did and just elevated it.
Yeah.
I think anytime you can do that and elevate it to the next level, like Ovi and Crosby have done, and that next generation, like Riggs has said, they're the faces of their franchise, and this might be their last hurrah, and just taking it that next step, that next level. He's definitely done that, and everyone's trying to reach him now. Just like Jordan has done, everyone's trying to reach him, and so on. But I think Wayne Gretzky, the great one, is definitely the greatest for me.
Riggs, word association, greatest player ever.
So I want to go back to that 2013 Boston Chicago Blackhawks Cup final. Even though they lost, Patrice Bergeron played that game 6 with a puncture and collapsed lung. That tells you what these guys are willing to go through and what they're willing to do to themselves to try and win that trophy. And I don't think anybody competes as hard as he does in all facets of the game. And that's just an example of it. So Patrice Bergeron for me. And also he's been a thorn in the side of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round for a couple playoffs. So that counts for something too.
My guy was Gordie Howe. I think he speaks for himself. I mean, when you go and look at what Gordie Howe did, he played till he was freaking 50 years old. And the things he pulled off. I mean, shit, they named a hat trick after him, a goal, an assist, and a fight. I mean, how can you go wrong with that? And that was a consistent thing with him. If it weren't for Wayne Gretzky, I think we'd still be trying to. As it is, there are records that aren't going to be broken that Gordie Howe has broken. But if it weren't for Wayne Gretzky, I don't know if any of Howe's records yet would have been broken. I'm there. I'm going to jump ahead. The greatest Stanley Cup moment that you can remember. I'm going to give mine first because this one was incredible to witness. Mario Lemieux taking the puck against the North Stars, splitting the defense, being on his ass and putting the goal past John Casey. Nothing like it. They built a freaking statue for it in Pittsburgh, okay? That's my favorite. Riggs?
Joe Sakic handing the cup to Raymond Bourque in 2001 to send him off. Finally a cup champion.
It's funny. That was my number 2 written down here in case somebody took my Lemieux one. Sis?
I didn't have like one that I think this plays over my head so much that I think it's like one of those things I thought I was there and I witnessed it, but I didn't because doing the math, I wasn't even born yet. But when Bobby Orr scored and he's flying in the air, I think that seeing those highlights and him skating around the ice, it stands out. And it's like, I've seen it so many damn times. I feel like I was there.
Man, I love hockey.
Yeah.
Will, in your young years, what do you remember?
Yeah. I mean, I think having the Pens win back-to-back cups and then going both the parades, and it's just like the energy at the parade is just insane. It's like, it's awesome.
Yeah. Let's do some, let's round out this show, which has been spectacular and lengthy in nature. Let's round it out with some shocking Stanley Cup facts. I'm going to start with you, Will. Give us a shocking Stanley Cup fact that you have.
So I didn't know where you wanted to go with this, but I went a shocking fact about the actual Stanley Cup. And this is kind of crazy, but this is something I found out. It's like they literally have someone that goes around. There's like one guy and it's a job, and you just have to walk around with the Stanley Cup, and like you're going city to city with it. Like there's just like one guy in charge of that, which I found kind of funny.
So that guy is like crapping his pants when they're throwing it into the like, what's job security like? They're sending it down to Wet Banana with grandma, and she's like, "Cup, like, what are you doing? You got to watch the cup."
Yeah. What's yours? Your shocking Stanley Cup facts is
mine. Lord Stanley, bring out the brandy. I didn't, you always hear the name, but that was an actual person. He was a governor up in Canada, and he was hooked on the game after he saw the first one. I don't know. It might have been a playoff game too. So he saw it. His kids convinced him, hey, Dad, there should be a trophy. So he created the trophy, and he called the trophy the Dominion Hockey Challenge Cup.
Oh,
it was in the late 1800s, but then obviously the name was later changed, and it has stuck to this day.
Excellent. Riggs?
Yeah, so I've actually been to the Governor General's mansion in Ottawa, and they have a outdoor rink there, and that's believed to be the first like backyard rink ever built in Canada. So when Lord Stanley was Governor General of Canada, they built it, and it's been there ever since. My son and I actually got to skate on it, so that's really cool history about Lord Stanley for sure. So I was going back to the goaltending mess in Washington. I was doing a little bit of research on Craig Anderson because he hasn't been in the playoffs since 2017, and he's an older guy. He's turning 40 this week.
Sure.
So of the active NHL goaltenders today with 25 or more playoff games played, so you can kind of normalize this.
Yeah.
Craig Anderson holds the best career save percentage in the playoffs with a 929.
That's unbelievable.
So maybe it's not so bad.
Hey, he had some good defense up in Ottawa. I got to be honest with you.
When they were making conference finals, for sure, he definitely had good defensemen in front of him.
Yeah.
The last few years where he kind of fell out of favor in Ottawa, maybe those teams weren't that good. So who knows?
My interesting, and it's not necessarily a Stanley Cup fact, but it's Stanley Cup playoff in nature. Marc-Andre Fleury has been in the Stanley Cup playoffs 15 straight years. 15 straight years. He's one of 4 goalies who can claim that. Only the guy ahead of him, Andy Moog, which blew my mind away when I saw that. I'm like, Andy Moog, you got to be kidding me.
That's a blast from the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, this has been spectacular. Thanks a lot, guys. Riggs, go ahead and plug Beers in a Lot again. Tell us what you got coming up.
Yeah, again, Beers in the Lot podcast. You can find it on all the platforms. We're on the socials at Beers in the Lot. You can go to beersinthelot.com if you're just looking for information about how to get in touch with us. We are going to be recording our 40th episode this week. So as you know, Mark, we usually open beers and share, what we're having and compare notes with each other before we get into the hockey stuff. So we are going to do 40s for 40 this week. So think about the popular 40-ounce beers or malt liquors that are out there. We're probably going to have one of them on.
A little old English, maybe.
Oh,
Who knows, huh?
Brown bagged up.
Hey, give those guys a listen. They do some great things on that show. I love listening to them. With our podcast, again, I want to thank T-Sizz and Will the Thrill for joining me once again with the BS crew. Check us out, OriginalSportsPodcast.com. That's our webpage. It'll take you to all our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Will runs all this, so he's putting it out there for you on a consistent basis. If you want to keep up with what we have going on with the NHL Playoff Bracket Challenge, we're actually we got a group of 25 people to jump on that challenge. We got Matt Barnaby, one of my guests coming up here in a few weeks, jumped in on that challenge with us. Got to love Matt Barnaby, huh?
Absolutely.
And
He needs the $50 promotion.
yeah. We look forward to having you all join us again next week. Thanks for joining us here on the Original Sports Podcast with Mark Maradei.
On the original. So sit right back, we're gonna tell you a story of heroes and warriors who played for the glory. They're about to see it in your stadium chair. We know all your teams and we can go on for days. It's game time from the original. Highlights and playoffs and very special guests. It's game time on the original Sportscast show by the best.